As a white man, I fully acknowledge that through my naivete in the past, I had inadvertently allowed the perpetuation of racism and discrimination to continue, whether or not that was my intention. Look, this video is going to come off a little bit different. I'm pretty passionate right now. But my purpose is to educate, especially educate a lot of white people. I don't represent the BLM movement. I'm a white dude. But sometimes some white people don't like listening to people of other races. So maybe they might listen to a white dude who has further taken the time to understand that systematic racism exists. I will be blunt. I will be passionate. Some of you will not like what I have to say. And I have to say, fine. I do not care what you think of me. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. But I hope you take the time to listen. Because a lot of you remind me of me. Not now, but in the past. I'm ashamed to say it, but about 4 years ago. There's a lot of people who do not have racist intentions, but do not understand that they're perpetuating a society in which racism exists, in which discrimination exists, in which police brutality on minorities exists. So I'm talking about 4 years ago. Let me give some background context. I took an African American literature class, and it wasn't my favorite class at the time. Can't say it's my favorite class now. And that's no fault of the teacher. That's no fault of my classmates. But at the time, I truly didn't get it. I'd read a lot of this literature, and I'd give my interpretations, and I'd be criticized for my interpretations, and I didn't understand why. I do now, but I'll get to that. In fact, I messaged this professor today, and I thanked her profusely. The most sincerest thanks I could ever give to her, because I'm at a point now where I'm not as ignorant about this. But continuing about that time, I remember talking to my fraternity brother about Black Lives Matter. Not the movement itself, mind you, but the concept of it. Didn't really register in my brain since I decided not to be a political guy. I decided not to research the socioeconomic implications of everything that's been going on. But instead, through my ignorance and through my naivete, I basically gave the all lives matter argument. Not the conservative side, mind you. I've never been a conservative dude, but I didn't realize the implications of the things that I say. Now, I talked to my fraternity brother, music fraternity, it's not what you think. And I guess I gave that basic argument of, if we just pretend that all lives matter, not pretend, that's not what I meant, but if we act as though all lives matter, then things will eventually become equal. Nope! But I remember him talking to me, and he said, but when it comes to Black Lives Matter, I get it. And that conversation has stuck out to me since then, because at this moment in time, I get it. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. One more time. Black Lives Matter. Now, the funny part about that time, when I was ignorant of politics, is my ex-girlfriend at the time, her dad is a major conservative, and he especially was at the time. And he thought that he was going to educate me and convert me to conservatism. Well, he didn't like me at the time. Probably still doesn't now, I don't really care. I've done a lot more research, and I gotta say, I'm a leftist. I consider myself a leftist. And as a leftist, I stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. So to the main point, what a lot of people don't understand is that with this Black Lives Matter movement, they are unintentionally allowing this narrative to be changed. Remember Colin Kaepernick? I don't know if you know, he was a famous football player who kneeled on a football field using his exposure in order to make a message happen, knelt during the national anthem in order to protest police brutality. And at the time, I didn't really know what to think of it. I didn't think it was bad necessarily. I didn't think it disrespected troops. But a lot of people did. A lot of people did. They changed the narrative from police brutality exists to you're disrespecting the troops. Don't protest that way. That is disrespectful to what the troops have fought for your rights. And wow, they really didn't get it. I didn't get it to the fullest extent. Man, they really didn't get it. I mean, you call for peaceful protest. You people want peaceful protest. When you get peaceful protest, you question it. And then suddenly, things are happening now. So, just in case you need some background context, a man named George Floyd was murdered on camera. For 8 minutes and 46 seconds, in that entire video, he had a knee on his neck. An unarmed black man, mind you. Just in case you needed that background context. And it's really important. Because here's one instance in which people are trying to change the narrative. An autopsy report came out. And it said that he was potentially under the influence of drugs. What's the word that kind of stands out? Potentially. Because that just kind of implies they're just like, oh, well, we're not sure, but this is potentially the reason. It had nothing to do with a knee being put on his neck for 8 minutes, 46 seconds straight, and choking to death, and yelling, I can't breathe, and begging for his mother. It's got nothing to do with it. But you have people like Candace Owens who go online and use their Facebook influence to really discredit what people are saying. She creates this giant straw man. It doesn't exist. It's not an argument. She just makes it, and people are just like, yeah. What she said, the Aunt Ruckus of the right. She's a grifter. I can't stand her. She's never going to watch this video. And I can't stand Candace Owens. And yet, she has the gall to say, it was reported that he did some stuff, allegedly. There was an alleged counterfeit $20 bill that someone called him on, and for cigarettes, which warranted murder, right? And she said, there might have been drugs in his system, and it caused a heart attack. This is really bizarre. I watched that whole 8 minutes and 46 seconds. To say, oh, nope, just suddenly passed out from a heart attack, even though what the police did is a practice that is not condoned. Well, it's not supposed to be. In theory, it's not supposed to be, because it can cause damage and kill people. But people are just eating this up with Candace Owens. It drives me up the wall. Because they are allowing her to delegitimize this important movement going on in American history. They're delegitimizing that systematic racism and oppression exists, that police brutality exists. And they don't want to acknowledge it. I get it. I wouldn't have wanted to acknowledge it either. But just because I get it doesn't mean I'm going to allow it. George Floyd had 4 men. Well, he had 1 man who choked him, and his accomplices, who didn't do anything as homicide happened. Oh, by the way, other autopsy reports that it was homicide. It's crazy. taken away legitimacy from that former argument. And regardless of what George Floyd did, or may have done, allegedly did, it doesn't matter. Let's have reality hit. George Floyd is dead. Whatever he did does not matter. He is dead. And then people don't understand why stuff is breaking out on the streets. Forgive me, my dog is barking. People are allowing authoritarianism to happen. People are allowing a change in the narrative. People are out there protesting police brutality. And Candace Owens says he shouldn't be treated as a martyr. Hate to tell you this, Candace. He's a martyr. He was made a martyr. He was made a martyr and a symbol for his death. He is dead. And this is the result. People are more aware that systematic oppression and racial discrimination exists. More people than there have been in a long time. I'm one of them, and I was super ignorant. I don't know the fullest extent of racism. I've never had to walk on the streets and worry about if a cop was going to stop me and potentially kill me. You know how many of those stories I've heard from friends? From people who aren't even really my friends, but they have their own stories about it? I don't have those stories. One of my buddies I talked to for 2 hours the other day, telling me his stories. Telling me about how he was put in handcuffs for his safety, even though he was entirely cooperative. He's told me stories about social interactions and how his skin tone affects him. Let's get back on track. Stop allowing the narrative to be changed. You were allowing Trump to change it. You were allowing the police to change it. You were allowing white supremacists to change it. And allegedly anarchists. I don't doubt there are some anarchists there. Though I don't think to the extent that people make it out to be. Here's what I mean. So one of the things that's been going on that I've seen from a lot of people, and the other people I've seen from a lot of people, is a really focusing on property damage. Now let me give some context on something that happened about 8 days ago. In my hometown of La Mesa, riots broke out. Now, no one died, thankfully, but buildings were burnt, businesses were ransacked, and violence broke out. And I watched this happen. I wasn't there, mind you. I watched a live stream. And it was chaos. It was chaotic. And I can't say that I was thrilled about it. I'm not going to lie, though. Union Bank and Chase Bank, I didn't care that they were burnt down. I don't care. They're insured. But Jared, if it's considered a terrorist attack, they won't be insured. Horseshit. Target will be insured. Small businesses will be insured, thankfully. One of my friends has a small business, and his business was ransacked. So what I'm saying is, I wasn't thrilled. I was a little bit angry this happened in my own town. But you know what makes me more angry? Systematic oppression of black people. Black people who worry about their safety on the streets and whether or not they're going to be killed by cops for no apparent reason. People who have been killed by cops for no apparent reason. Human lives are not replaceable. Property is. When you focus on the property, you're taking away from what the movement is about. Let me read some names for you of human lives that won't ever come back. They won't be replaced. No monetary value will ever replace them. Philando Castile, Michael Brown, Breonna Taylor, Tatiana Jefferson, Walter Scott, Oscar Grant, Tamir Rice, Matthew Ajibade, Patterson Brown Jr., William Chapman, Kevin Matthews, Michael Noel, Jamal Clark, Christian Taylor, Darius Stewart, Tanisha Anderson, Sean Bell, Charles Kinsey, William McCoy, Jonathan Farrell, Stephen Clark, Randolph Evans, Terrence Crutcher, Timothy Stansberg, and Jeremy McDowell. More names can be added to that. Oh, Jeremy McDowell was also killed, a paraplegic that was killed. And that's the one thing that the governor focused on, was him being a paraplegic, and they went a little too far. None of the other things about unarmed black men being blatantly killed. And as far as I know, not really resisting arrest. Man, there's a lot of stories that go on. Lots of black people being killed. Those lives will never be replaced. They are dead. Just like George Floyd. And the reason I bring up the property damage aspect is there are some people that I know, some people that I don't know, who believe in the movement. For the most part, they believe in the movement. But man, they will talk about the destruction, and they will be angry about the destruction. Where does the destruction come from? Like, there's a couple of questions you need to ask yourselves. One, who caused the destruction? Well, Trump allegedly said Antifa, an organization that doesn't actually exist as an entity. It has no structure and no confirmed members to it. But they should be considered a terrorist organization. Oh, no, it couldn't be white supremacists posing as Antifa to cause chaos on the streets. It couldn't be undercover cops that are posing as rioters or looters and breaking windows in order to cause chaos. And it certainly couldn't be the police rioting themselves. You know what happened in La Mesa to cause those riots? Well, allegedly what happened is some white dudes would grab water bottles and throw them at the police department building, or at the police who are also on the roof. That happened, but I guess harmless water bottles, they might have contained something, Jarrett. What do cops wear in order to protect themselves during a riot? Maybe it's like full riot gear, and they could take preventative measures in case it's filled with something. But it was filled with water. They were filled with water. This is alleged, by the way. This is what I heard. I don't know how accurate it is. But you know what really caused the riot? Well, and forgive me, I had to write down this name. There was a black lady in La Mesa who just happened to be shot by a beanbag round to the face by the police and put into a coma. But hey, the police said it was considered less lethal. They thought it was in their best interest to throw tear gas and unload rubber bullets and beanbag rounds. Look, there are plenty of confirmed videos that you can watch right now of cops antagonizing, and the cops causing people to run in fear, and the cops breaking building, while in uniform, by the way. It's like they're trying to change the narrative. It's like the cops, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, they act cultish. They do. They're their own little club. And it's kind of weird when you have police departments that will investigate their own for injustices that have clearly been committed and write it off. Oh, they might be suspended a few days. Or they might lose their job and immediately find another job in another area. But no. Apparently that violence was warranted from the riot that they inevitably created. Riots that they have created in multiple areas. Not just in San Diego, but around the United States. I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot of people protesting in multiple cities around the United States. But please understand, when you focus on the destruction, when you focus on the property damage, I know you don't want to acknowledge it. I know it's hard. Well, I don't know now. I think it's pretty easy because I'm doing it. You're delegitimizing the Black Lives Matter movement. I don't know what else to tell you. You're delegitimizing the Black Lives Matter movement. You are allowing Trump to further perpetuate his authoritarianism. You are further allowing white supremacist groups to get what they want in delegitimizing the Black Lives Matter movement. And you are allowing the police to change the narrative in order to make themselves look good, or whatever other intentions that they have. So to the second question, I never addressed this. Why else are they happening? Well, you've had peaceful protesters over the years, many, many years, who have, again, been peaceful. And every time they have an attempt at being peaceful, they are criticized continuously by the media or people online or whatever have you. They're being told, protest peacefully. Not that way, not that way, not that way. Fuck Kaepernick, like stuff like that. And then suddenly you have so much pent-up anger that something like the execution of George Floyd would escalate that anger. Now, look, I don't like violent protest. I'm not a fan of it. I think peaceful protest is more effective, but you got to acknowledge where it comes from. You have to. You have to. If you're not asking yourself why this happened, you are going to allow riots to happen later. If you want to prevent riots from happening later, you have to understand what is happening now. Because in a happy society, we wouldn't have riots happen. We're not happy in the United States. Especially minorities aren't happy. Black people, Latino, indigenous people, gays, the LGBTQ plus movement. I shouldn't have said it that sternly. That's not, that could be taken out of context. They're continuously oppressed. I'm not. I got it really good. But I want everyone else there that I just mentioned to have it really good. And now when they're angry, people are going, "Whoa, where did this come from? This came out of nowhere. Oh, they're destroying property." Well, property being destroyed has no leverage on the systematic oppression of black people who are being disproportionately targeted and incarcerated systematically. Yeah. Don't know if you know about that, but that happening is far worse than property damage. It's been going on for centuries, about 400 years. And now when people are pissed, they're trying to change the narrative more than ever. I mean, hell, you have Governor Gavin Newsom, who, for the most part, I thought he handled this well, but he rejected Trump's advice in bringing in the National Guard, and then 200 National Guard people come into La Mesa. Now, okay, someone's going to have to educate me on the semantics about that. I know it was requested locally in San Diego, but as far as I know, the governor has to approve that. So I didn't do enough research on that. I might not have enough merit to actually talk about the matter. But the point is, people are putting in more troops and more authority than ever. Hell, you've had Trump, who has actively advocated for authoritarianism and fascism. Oh my God, things are so fucking fascist. Like it's incredible. You don't understand how fascistic things have become. Like I said, the cops, the majority of the time, they instigate the violence. And then all of a sudden you have Trump saying, you know, we need more troops. We need more troops to hold the protesters accountable. God, if that doesn't sound like anti-free speech. And at D.C., as he hid in his bunker and wanted to go to church, he decided to have those protesters tear gassed so that he could have a photo op while carrying a Bible backward and upside down. Couldn't like open it like a book. Could have been like, this is a Bible, but just like, yeah. Like, Trump has been incredibly authoritarian and has been, unfortunately, semi-effective in delegitimizing the BLM movement. In the sense of people are just like, yeah, they're just being violent. He's like, I don't condone violence. Well, the protesters aren't condoning violence either. They're being as peaceful as possible. But there's a lot of systematic, a lot of things going on systematically to delegitimize the Black Lives Matter movement. Look, as a white man, through my naivete and my ignorance, I was unintentionally complicit in the perpetuation of racism and systematic discrimination. Whether or not I intended for that to happen. The first step in acknowledging, and trying to defeat white supremacy is to acknowledge that it exists. Now, at that time that I talked about years ago, I knew it existed. I never wanted to acknowledge it. And I think that's a problem with a lot of people right now. They don't want to acknowledge it exists. They know it exists. But they don't want to acknowledge it. And again, it happens systematically. Hell, it happens on a federal level. Hell, the fucker that I claimed in the last video that I want to vote for, not that I want to vote for, but I feel that I need to vote for, Joe Biden, wrote the 1994 crime bill, which incarcerated more minorities than ever, as it had a crackdown and it made the punishments that much higher. And you know what happens when you make punishments that much higher? Like, people stay in jail for longer. And there's always this argument of they need... black men don't stay with their families, and they need a father figure. The kids need a father figure. But if they're being incarcerated, they don't have a father figure. And you keep them incarcerated for a longer period of time and cause more destabilization. You see where I'm getting at? Look, man, white people of my skin color, the ones that I never wanted to acknowledge, would be so cruel to do this, have held minorities down for years. It's happening today. It's going to happen in the future, unfortunately. And I'm here to fight against that. Black Lives Matter. That fucker Joe Biden, who I said I'm going to vote for, wrote the damn crime bill. I'm not proud of it. But I guess he's the best we've got. Look, man, there's a lot of thoughts going through my mind, and I'm pretty pissed. But if not just white people who are watching this, who used to have that point of view, I hope other people watching this who stand with the movement are just further reminded of stuff that goes on and why the fighting needs to continue. And the narrative needs to not allow to be changed. Well, Jared, what can we do to fix this? I don't have the perfect solutions. But it's kind of weird. A lot of these laws are approved on state levels, even though these problems occur in literally every single state. Why don't you have, if crimes that police commit be investigated by an independent department? Not cops investigating other cops and allowing them to get away with it. That's a start. And I know a lot of people don't like this. Defund the police. Not like get rid of every fund, but you give them more money, you give them more power. Welcome to America. But hold the police accountable for the crimes that they commit, because that's not happening now. It's not. It's really not. Oh, well, those guys that you mentioned, they were arrested. It just had to take this giant escalation, because at first they were fired. It just took this giant escalation for them to be like, yeah, maybe we should have a investigation to probably save our own asses. But maybe have an independent department be able to investigate police-related crimes as they happen. And defund the police. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. Like, oh, who's going to protect you? Oh, the police. Doing their job. They're just held accountable. Crazy. Crazy, right? Because they've been allowed to get away with so much as innocent people are murdered. I'm going on for 30 minutes. But I want to reiterate some things. As a white man, I acknowledge fully that through my ignorance and naivete, I was fully complicit in allowing to have racism and systematic oppression perpetuate. Right now, I get it. I haven't been out there protesting with everyone else. Most I've been able to do is donate money to individual funds and make videos in hopes to educate people on why this movement is important. It's always been important, but especially now more than ever, we are witnessing history happen. And if you are with the Black Lives Matter movement, this is a moral issue. And when I say it's a moral issue, I say you're on the right side of history. Look at what we're witnessing. We're witnessing an awakening of what Medgar and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Not only are we witnessing an awakening of what we're fighting for, but we're witnessing an awakening in what they died for. This is important. And remember, the first step in acknowledging or in fighting against white supremacy is acknowledging that it exists. It exists. As a white man, let me tell you something. It exists. We are witnessing that every day. It has always existed. But taking that first step in truly wanting equality is acknowledging that white supremacy exists. We don't stop fighting. We continue. And I hope all of you have taken the time to watch this video. Not even watch it, but at least listen. Some of you don't like what I said. I know it. Some of you don't want to hear the words I've just said. I know it. Some of you won't like me for the words that I've just said. I know it. Let me tell you something. I don't care. I don't care what you think of me. It doesn't matter what you think of me. What matters to me is what I think about the people who are on the front lines fighting for peace, fighting for a better tomorrow, fighting for justice, justice that we care about in this United States, but don't actually practice. And I care that you hopefully understand where they're coming from. I have a lot to learn too. Trust me, I have a lot to learn. So do you. There's a lot more that can be done. In the meantime, stay safe. If you're out there protesting, more power to you. Put my fist in the air, by the way. I will stand with you. I love you. And keep fighting.